Here's your instant match reaction for Everton 0, Leeds United 1 in the Premier League. Disappointing day for Everton at Goodison Park. Second defeat in a row at Goodison Park. Couldn't build on that win against Fulham last week. Joining me today are Evertonians from all around the world. Dave Downey from Manchester, Ryan Reynolds from Australia, and Rob Vera from the United States. Dave, I'll come to you first, mate, because I sort of poked fun at you all this week for being negative about this game, poked fun at you and What's the Score for being negative about this game, and you've proven emphatically right because Leeds just ran all over Everton today, didn't they, really?
Yeah, I don't like being right, but I did fear this, didn't I? I said on the weekly that I was petrified of this game in particular, simply because of what Leeds brought to the match as their sort of standard style of play compared to everything we don't have, and that's why it was a real mismatch for me. Don't get me wrong.
Sorry, Dave. Just accidentally used you there. Carry on. Yeah.
Well, it's been done before. Yeah, and I felt as if it was a game. If Everton were going to win it, they had to strike early and they had to defend well. They did neither of those things, and the latter was quite telling in the sort of system shape and personnel Carlo Ancelotti elected to put to the field today. But yeah, I mean, my worst fears were sort of come to reality in that their fitness and intensity, and I put it on Twitter just now, it just shows you how much you can do with that and how important it is, regardless of the fact this being the elite level. You can see why they cruised the championship, simply because fitness is everything in that league, and if you've got a tiny bit of technical ability, that's what ultimately makes the difference. And they have got some decent technical players, not ones that every single team in the Premiership would be looking at thinking, oh, I'd take him. I don't think they have that one redeeming player that you think, yeah, he's the X factor. But that team collective and they fight, they die for that manager. It's simple as that. They put everything on the line for him. Can we say the same? I'm not necessarily sure. I don't think we have players who are engineered that way. We had an interesting conversation mid-match about Alan, and I think he was the only one who stood up to the fitness that Leeds overpowered us with at times. I thought he was excellent in the second half and looked like he was getting fitter throughout the game, which is in stark contrast to a few weeks ago when he looked a little bit sluggish at times. So it was pleasing to see that. But the rest of them, I mean, it was just a big mishmash of sort of nothingness in the end, wasn't it? You put in our group, didn't you, what is this system? What is this shape? Towards the end of it, Mark Mosey was saying the same, wasn't he? That we end up at the end of games, everybody looking at each other thinking, what were we meant to be doing there, lads? And it felt like the more the game went on, we become much more disjointed. And let's face it, I think we were really lucky to get out of it at just 1-0. Towards the end, they had some really good chances, should have made it 2. Great saves from Pickford. But yeah, I mean, it felt to me like a bit too predictable, this Matt. And, you know, again, I think we're not sort of too sort of within ourselves not to blame Carlo Ancelotti. But again, I think this part of this goes on him with this system we've set up with. And obviously he fell back into a corner given the personnel that we had injured. Coleman and Luca Dean out, you're going to struggle, obviously. But the answer he come up with was one that looked very, very disjointed, not confident in its ability to be able to keep a clean sheet in the game. And we paid the price. Incredibly frustrating. You know, we could have done a really good thing going up to third had we won this. But again, it highlights, I think we're getting into games this season, I think, where when we lose them or when we drop points, when we don't play so well, we're seeing sort of everything stripped back a little, aren't we? And seeing what really needs to be done with this side. I mean, it would have been false had we gone third, wouldn't it? Let's face it.
Yeah,
we haven't played well enough. So, you know, that's a disappointment. But Everton are such a work in progress. I have to say, though, really good match to watch. I enjoyed watching. I imagine neutrals would have loved watching that game just because it was utter carnage for 99%.
Yeah, but I suppose, come to you, Ryan, on this, it's one of them, isn't it, where, you know, Dave's right, it was an open game, but we're sat here against Leeds, been good this season, but they're a newly promoted team. And we're talking about Everton's best 2 players being the goalkeeper, who kept it from being, you know, a lot more in their favour. You've got to say he made more serious saves than the Leeds goalkeeper. You've got to say, or probably made about the same amount of saves in total. And I'll hold the midfielder with the 2 best players. That's got to be a worry, hasn't it? Because Everton were just, you know, Leeds just sort of squirts the life out the game and suffocated Everton, didn't he, late on?
Yeah, 100%. And it all started really early too. I mean, how sloppy were we in possession. We were just turning the ball over and over again. And I know Leeds did the same quite a bit as well, but they just seemed to find their gear a little bit earlier. And Pickford, I think we talked about it off air, and Rob made a really good point when he mentioned that Pickford plays his one in four good games, and you don't want to waste them. You want to waste it when the whole team's playing really well. And I think that was a really good point because he was outstanding today. I mean, he kept us in the game for long periods. He made some really good saves. I thought his distribution wasn't too bad as well. He looked to get us going on the front foot, and to not sort of use that to the best of his abilities, or the best of the team's abilities, I should say, is really disappointing. And then just on Allen as well, I thought that was his best game since Tottenham. I thought he was absolutely superb in that second half, and I think it goes to show that that's the play that we can have in a system when we eventually get players back, that he can play that little bit further forward, and maybe just highlights again how crucial it is to have that real holding midfielder if we're going to play four at the back, and puts a bit more pressure on Gabaman to come into this side and fill that hole, because I think we can see some evidence there that Alan could be really dangerous in that position further forward, where he probably doesn't have as many defensive responsibilities.
Yeah, Rob, what did you make of it overall, mate? Me, you and Mike had a big chat in the kick about in regards to the, where do we pitch this in terms of being an attacking side and a defensive side? And Everton didn't really see me either today, but you've preached about these defensive issues are solvable, and it doesn't really feel like there's going to be a ton of work done to fix them. But I've got to say, even though we conceded one goal today and we broke that run of conceding 2 or more goals in every Premier League game apart from Tottenham, it didn't feel like Everton had made strides in the defensive play at all.
Not enough, and really, kind of like Dave said, Leeds are such a weird side to try to get healthy against, if you will, from a defensive standpoint. Given some of the matchup issues, but I frankly feel like the last couple of weeks, but really this week and maybe some when we were losing, I feel like for as much as I love Carlo Ancelotti, there've been some unforced errors, if you will, in terms of getting cute with these lineups. I felt all week, obviously missing Dean and Coleman, that you're going to stay with 3 at the back. That's fine. I saw that most people rightly predicted that you'd have Keane being flanked by Holgate and Godfrey, and my first thought was Keane will have the benefit of not being flanked by Keane, which will really help him out there a little bit. But then you have this situation where last week you were good going forward. You'd only had 2 days to kind of work on that system defensively. But I felt like, hey, if you're just going to keep the back 3 the same, barring Holgate coming in, don't introduce more change there than you need to. Like, Iwobi played really well at right wing back last week. Why not just leave him there and go like for like and replace Dean with Nkunku at that point, or start the game with Delph if you want something that you feel is a little more defensively solid. But what I don't understand is getting cute and saying we're not going to play either of the 2 available fullbacks we've got, and we're going to use Tom Davis there. And Tom, and to his credit, he wasn't bad. He created a great chance that Doucouré should have scored on early in the game, but it's just that it felt like too many cute, smarty pants sort of changes that maybe didn't need to be made. I felt like you could have stuck with basically what you went with last time, give everyone a little more time in their positions. Replace Mina with Keane. That's fine. I don't see any problem with putting him in the middle, but I just thought it was a bridge too far. And ultimately, but having said all of that, we still created enough chances where we should have scored some goals. We, had a close offsides on the Rodriguez goal. Doucouré should score. I mean, it's just one of those things where if we score, we're having a different conversation. But again, defensively, we're really, really fortunate that we didn't concede 4 goals today. And this idea that everyone has a lot of simple answers, especially on Everton Twitter, about, hey, you just replace one guy and it solves everything. And that's just not true. The defensive issues Everton have are fueled by their constant turnovers of the ball in midfield. and the fact that they have some issues with, frankly, chopping and changing a lot on that defensive back line. And so, there's got to be a little more stability added there. Of course, some of that is out of his control because of injuries. But frankly, until we stop giving the ball away and fueling counterattacks against us, we're going to continue to see some of these issues.
Yeah, that was the biggest issue for me. I think today they just, Decore in particular had a really tough game. I was surprised, when it was confirmed that Delph was going to come on. I thought it would be Decore who would go off and Davis would go into midfield because he played terribly up until that point as well. But just even the back three at times today, just little passes out wide into positions, and Leeds sprung into action, and you just think you need to be a bit cuter and a bit smarter in those sorts of positions, don't you? Especially against a side that is going to press you that high up the pitch.
Well, when's your next stats pack show?
Early this week, yeah.
It's a really appropriate time to have one, I think, because I can't think of a time, and we're not great at it anyway, that we've retained the ball worse than today. I thought Ryan was spot on the first 5 minutes, and they did it as well, but I don't really care about them. In terms of the ball retention and the turnover of possession was non-existent, and with us, that should be more on us than it should be on Leeds, even if you're a neutral looking at this game, because when they give the ball away, they're fine because they can hunt in packs and get it back. That's such as the intensity and fitness. That's not our game at all. Our game is when we have the ball, you treat it in a precious way and keep it for as long as possible and hope to launch an attack with it. That was completely non-existent. First 5 minutes, I tweeted at the time, it was almost like Bielsa and Ancelotti agreed to let everybody go on the pitch and do what they wanted to at the time. Such was the lack of discipline in our play. And I mentioned this, I think, a couple of weeks ago about a leader in this side. Holgate's back in. A lot of people happy that he's captain. He's not up to speed yet. I think that's blatantly obvious. If not, still carrying maybe a little bit of a niggle from his time out. But to me, in that midfield area as well, I just don't see who is puffing out their chest, dictating what we do. Alan was superb, but he was superb on an individual basis, I think. You need to create partnerships sort of all over the pitch, and we don't do that in midfield in particular. Decore was genuinely a headless chicken, Matt.
Yeah, Alan's performance today was indicative of that. I'm just going to do this myself, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was him.
He got the ball and just drove forward with it.
Yeah, and he nearly scored the goal of the season by doing so as well. I mean, my heart was in my mouth when he knocks it round the Leeds defender and then pings one, it nearly deflects in at the near post. And I'm like, that's awesome. You want to see that? How often have you seen an Everton player over the years be able to do that and drive forward? Indeed, it's what we want and expect from Decore to do that. But him, in a positional sense, I don't know whether he'd been told to do a number of different things, but it was like he had a million different things in his head and he wasn't able to execute one of them to any sort of decent standard. And that for Alan is such a shame when you've got him working so hard, particularly off the ball as well. I mean, in the second half, some of the challenges he put in from nowhere to win the ball back. And even when there was a simple pass on, he decided to run with the ball instead. It'd be interesting to see what his sort of sprint numbers were, Matt, and his dribbles in the game, because he looked like a completely different midfielder to me. Maybe that's something we can work on and get him doing some more.
Dave, do you just want to host the stats pack this week? Seems like you've got more questions than I'm going to have anyway.
I'll certainly be posting those questions, Matt. Don't worry. But it felt to me like he felt it was out of necessity rather than a genuine tactic in the game. Felt like he was forced into doing that when he'd much rather have his own role in the team that he's been given by Ancelotti, so everybody else falls in line and is able to come up with a plan that affects the team in a positive way. He's done it out of spite in many ways, I feel. And then you go back to that initial question with the sort of defensive culpabilities. I just didn't see what we were trying to do in terms of a line. I thought Michael Keane was all over the place. Their goal comes from a really poor piece of defending because they're switching the ball from right to left across their midfield. You expect Rafinha, who ends up in quite a high sort of central position when you'd expected him to be on the overlap. Everyone shifts the body shape as if it's going out to that left-hand side to be fired into the box. He just simply looks and thinks, well, all the Everton players are moving that way. Why don't I just move the other way? Slides it to his left and rips one. And it's a fantastic finish. Godfrey should be out to him quicker. It's quite a flimsy effort, isn't it? How many times do we see the ball go between defenders' legs and nestle into the bottom corner? They're probably a little bit unlucky, to be honest with you. The goal they actually score, ironically, comes from probably a little bit of luck, but how many other chances did they have to put it away, if we're honest with ourselves? But I want to stress here, though, I know, because this conversation's going one way into like a moan fest from us all, and rightly so, but we're not going to play teams like that every week. This is purely a one-off in terms of the type of game we've played. Everton aren't going to come up against sides like that most weeks in the Premier League. And maybe you can count on one hand the amount of games that will be like that, with sides that put so much emphasis on fitness and intensity. So from that point of view, you sort of treat it a little bit like a cup game, I think, if you're analysing it, because who have we got next? Burnley, is it?
Well, it'll be like a totally different sport, won't it?
Well, yeah, it will be. That's exactly right. It'll be like a completely different sport playing against them. Real physical battle, and one way, if we're able to get the ball down and play, you think you could open them up, given what City did to them today. But that's why I'm not going to get too critical of how we lost the game. But there were so many things that were variables within our control that we failed to do and keep hold of.
And I think, is there not a case as well, Ryan, that maybe, you spoke about the manager there, and maybe he's got a few things wrong recently. Is he just overcomplicating all this? Is there not a case to say that Iwobi played really well at right wing back last week against Fulham? Keep him at right wing back. We've got a young left back there in Nkunku who's done well this season, but he's been given chances. He started him against Newcastle, and instead the manager's already... He's unsettled and rejigged the back five that was nowhere near solid against Fulham even further by moving probably our best performer on the day out of position and brought Tom Davies in. Is it not a sense that, if we need a right wing back to replace Seamus Coleman, give it to Alex Iwobi? If we need a left wing back to replace Lugadin, give it to Nkunku?
Yeah, 100%. And I don't know, maybe this is just the simple Australian way of looking at things, a sport that's not our national game or our first sport, but I just kind of look at it and go, why we've got two perfectly fine, fullbacks in Kenny and Nkunku there that can play their wing back position, no worries at all. If what we're going to get out of Iwobi and Davies today is in an attacking sense, then I feel like we're not going to lose anything by Nkunku and Kenny playing in those two positions. And they're probably going to be better defensively. They'll understand their positioning a little bit more, and maybe you don't concede a sloppy goal. I don't know. But at the same time,
oh, have we lost Ryan there?
I think your internet doesn't stretch across 3 different countries, Matt.
Oh, he's back. He's back. Go on, Ryan. Sorry, mate. Continue. You saying about the attacking side of the play those two offer.
Yeah. And I hope I'm not going over myself here, but if Davies and Iwobi, if that's all they're going to produce going forward, then I don't think we're going to lose much by having Kenny and Nkunku in the team, and you're more sound defensively in that regard because they understand the positions more. And I think it leads to a secondary point in that we talk about players who are confused, and you've got Iwobi who's now played right wing back, left wing back, and then left and right up the front. You've got Decore whose role is to play. He's played right back, right wing back. He's played in midfield. He's tasked to either push forward and join in the attack, and then also cover Rodriguez when he doesn't want to track back. It's just so confusing. The whole system is really confusing. You can see it on the pitch that things aren't coming together as such.
I was just gonna say the point Ryan makes there is really important, I think, because we tend to champion players that are versatile. We all remember in the Moyes era how many signings he'd make of players who could play multiple positions. I think what we saw an example of tonight was versatility, and versatile players should not necessarily be our primary option when your secondary option, if you like, is players that won't give you an attacking outlet but know their position, like a John Joe Kenny and like an Nkunku, who obviously we don't know much about, but we know more about John Joe Kenny. Is there a time to say, and I'm obviously going to answer yes to this, is there a time you simply pose that question to yourself and think, well, do we go with somebody who we know can play in that position successfully, or do we go with somebody who will give us much more than an attacking outlet in the game, but will not be anywhere near the positional sense and everything else that goes with the finer details of playing in a full-back position? And I think tonight, emphatically, it was answered yes. We would rather have that player and then concern ourselves in an attacking forte with the players that know how to do that. I guess what I'm trying to say in short is that players who are so versatile that they can fill a number of roles shouldn't always be the preferred option.
Yeah, Robbie, you were nodding your head for Sifri there when Ryan was speaking. I'm assuming you agree with that as well.
Yeah, I think whether it's going with leaving Iwobi where he was because he was so successful last week, or to Ryan's point, bringing Kenny in and just having someone who at least plays right back as his primary position, or as your right wing back, you sacrifice maybe a little out there offensively. But then on the left-hand side, maybe you feel more comfortable going with Nkuku at that point. But again, I go back to what I said before. It all just felt like a bit too much change when really what was needed maybe was a tweak and some defensive drilling this week, which by all accounts they got. And again, as Dave said, I'm kind of with Dave. I don't want to get too negative just because I can count three goals we should have scored in this game that we didn't, that were barely offsides or just chances that we didn't finish off. But having said all of that, defensive issues for me are, I guess it feels at times like Ancelotti is just for right now going through one of those periods where he's a step behind in his responsiveness to what the issue is. And then he tries to, he'll see what happens in this game, try to compensate for it. But by then you're playing Burnley, and that's a completely different game or a different sport, as you guys said before. And so I think that those types of things are about getting some rhythm back. And frankly, guys, as we've been talking about a lot, you just get the sense that there is a lack of balance or a lack of symmetry, if you will, in that midfield. You feel like, and I hate even saying it, but maybe it's not, I hate to put it on Gabaman per se, but it does feel like there is a recognized holding defensive midfielder who knows that role. There's that hole right there.
Yeah.
If you have that, it feels like it would improve a lot of the other aspects of the game, including the midfielders feeling more comfortable with their roles. Maybe you're not giving the ball away quite as much. You're providing a little extra coverage defensively. And again, I don't think Everton have to, this is not a crisis point. They don't need to completely reinvent themselves going forward. They just need to get a little bit better at keeping the ball and a little bit better defensively in terms of their shape, and they're going to be okay. But I feel right now we're just scrambling a little too much, and the constant changes and kind of positional changes especially don't seem to be remedying that issue.
Yeah, I think he's just been guilty. The manager's been guilty of overcomplicating things over the last few weeks. Like, it's just, it was the case for me that when Richarlison was out the side, get the player in the team who's most like Richarlison in Anthony Gordon. When Luca Dean's out the side, get the player most like him in the team in Nkunku. The same with Seamus Coleman at right back. I feel like it's the straightforward answers to quite simple questions here, but I don't know if it's a lack of trust or whether, maybe this is something we'll speak about more in the week, whether there's a pattern emerging here where he doesn't quite trust some of the younger players in the squad. I don't know. But instead of just replacing piece for piece in the side, it feels like he's ripping everything up and trying to start it again. Dave, you're going to make a point there?
I was just going to say, he'll definitely know next time we play at Goodison because he'll have some people there to tell him. Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think sometimes football, I'm not saying this of him because I think he's a pragmatic manager in general. But there are, we've lost 4 of the last 5 now. There are occasions where we've been able to pinpoint where we've got things wrong, and he's made a complicated decision or chosen the complicated option rather than staying with something that's perfectly simple. Rob's point that he's made a couple of times about Iwobi staying where he was. The only reason I can think he could have changed that is because he's so worried about Leeds getting in down the left. You look at Rafinha, who scored the goal, was one of their best attacking players. And he is lightning quick as well. Iwobi going the other way was ineffective because he was so good defensively as well. He's a top player. I think he's a really good left back. Somebody we wish we had to replace Luca Dean in this time. But yeah, I mean, why not go when you've got evidence of it to back it up? Now I think that's the more frustrating thing. We've seen these variations in what he tries to do not work. So when you've got the evidence that it hasn't worked, why not go back to something that is much more simple? Go to a flat back 4. You've got Holgate fit, Keane next to him. You put Nkunku in. You leave either Alex Iwobi at a genuine right back position, tell him to get forward when he wants to. That to me seems a lot more simple. Look, it's after the event, isn't it? He's obviously thought he's masterminded the way. coping with what Leeds and Bielsa bring to football matches. And yeah, like I say, we don't have to play them again until next year. So I mean, it's in terms of the finer detail and analysis of the game, it's purely a one-off. But in terms of how we impose ourselves on any match, there are some gaping holes in that side that he needs to get a grip of, particularly coming up against the Burnley that's only won one game so far this season.
Yeah, and just sort of focus on the attack, Ryan, before we finish. Sort of said to before we started off, I think because of the fact that we had midfielders playing as wing backs, it just sort of felt like the front three were left to just create things on their own today. Apart from that one Decore run early in the first half, and it didn't really work out for any of them. Did it? Richarlison was off it, maybe trying a little bit too hard. James seemed to be all over the pitch, and I think when he gets the ball, James, he goes through processes of, I'm going to look left, and he was like, oh, there's no Luca Dean there. I'm going to look right. There's no one running up the right-hand side. And then by that point, it was sort of like, gobbled up by the Leeds midfield. It just didn't really click for any of them today, did it? And it was probably a bit of a consequence of the system around them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we were sort of relying on some individual brilliance there as well a little bit. All those opportunities we created outside of the Decore chance were all sort of little glimmers of some individual brilliance. But, I just kind of feel like Richarlison's a player at the moment that just needs to score a goal. You can just see every game that ticks by, that little bit of burden just jumps on your shoulders a little bit more. And he's had so many near misses. Some really good saves have been made against some of his shots in the past few games. And you can just sort of see it in his eyes that he's just one player that really needs to score. And I kind of feel like the floodgates will open for him once he gets that off his chest. But there's just something about him at the moment. I think he's just really feeling the pressure of not being able to score.
Yeah, final word to you then, Rob, on that. The attack and not quite far today. I mean, I think Dom was good again today. I thought in spells, he held the ball up really well, but Rodriguez not quite on it the last few weeks. Richarlison, I don't know, like Ryan said, maybe feeling the pressure a little bit. That one in the second half, which James played through to Richarlison on his left foot. I thought he was going to hit the target with that, but he spooned it over. Usually so reliable in front of goal, but just something not quite clicking for him at the moment.
Yeah, it's one of those weird games because of the way Leeds play. They put you under such pressure, both in transition offensively and defensively. And what I mean by that is that when you are getting back there on offense, from an attacking standpoint, sometimes because of the frenetic nature of the game, you just feel like you have to instinctively choose to do everything, and you kind of lose some of that systematic approach that has been really working for you. I think everyone just starts scrambling like a fast break in basketball. And Everton can do a little of that, but I still don't know that that's really our best game. And I'm always a little tense whenever we are on the break and it's Dom leading the break. Like he's the one that I want getting into the box, and instead of having to make a decision with a pass. But guys like Rodriguez and so on, I think that they kind of got into that situation today that Ryan describes, where everyone just felt at a certain point when they couldn't score that they had to just kind of manufacture their own moment, and that just it didn't end up coming off. Having said that, these are the kinds of games that you bring big individual talents for, bring individual talents in for. The idea being that there are going to be games where you can't get your normal flow going, but do you have guys that can make those moments themselves? Well, we do. It's just that they weren't able to do it today. I mean, Rodriguez almost did. Richarlison almost did. That's the frustrating part. Now, unfortunately, we go into what feels like, again, having lost 4 or 5, like a bit of a must win against a bad Burnley side who have just conceded they lose 5-0 today or something like that. I mean, of all, like, I don't want them coming off a heavy loss, frankly. and that's just because I feel like it's going to be 0-0, 1-0, 1-0 sort of game written all over it. And Everton, frankly, are now in a position where they've got to kind of muscle up to this moment, if you will, and they've got to find a way. You not getting anything today really kind of hurts getting momentum going into this final stretch, but you've got to win at Burnley. You win at Burnley, then you start to feel like, all right, we can make something happen for the festive period. But I just don't want to hear, and we've lost today. What I don't want to hear is, well, this is kind of to be expected with Luka Dean out. We talked about this all week long. A lot of these top sides have lost key players to even more severe injuries than what Luka Dean has just gone through, and they're finding a way. Everton are going to have to find a way. They can't continue to use one person, one player missing as an excuse. It is an explanation, but it can't be an excuse. And so hopefully we've got the sort of manager who has the kind of experience and acumen to find a way through.
Yeah, let's quickly read some comments out before we go. Les, obviously from this parish, has said there's no excuse for any team not to be able to match teams like Leeds for fitness. Should be an absolute baseline. Let's quickly go through some more. Lee, quadruple 178 look like a team of strangers in that formation against the well-drilled side. Too many players off the pace, and the shape is so fragmented. Dave Macker said, Dave, it's sad when you have to say, don't worry, we'll only play teams such as this 5 times. We should be this type of team.
Well, I don't get what he means.
Just saying we shouldn't be getting overrun and outran by these.
Oh, no, he's absolutely right. I just mean in the particulars of what Leeds United are as a football club and what they're renowned for. Everton don't have that. They don't. That's not the way we play. Look, there's more than one way to win football matches, and there's more than one way of playing against Leeds United. And the way we play today just seemed to play into their hands, I guess is what I'm saying. To put more of a finer point on it, but he's right. What I think he means is why are Everton not taking the initiative against teams like Leeds United. I feel that their very unique style makes it difficult for a side that lacks pace, penetration, and genuine power in attacking areas. It's difficult to break down a Leeds side that will throw everything at you going the other way, because if you go gung-ho against them, as we tried to do towards the end to snatch an equaliser, you've seen how many chances they created, and you've seen how often Jordan Pickford was called upon. That's what I'm saying. We don't win. We're not that team that can do that, unfortunately, because we have generally slow players. Who's the fastest player in Everton shirt on the pitch today? Richarlison, maybe? Possibly Richarlison, maybe Holgate in a foot race. I don't know. The point is, they've got a load, and all due respect to them, but like I think you said in the preview today, Matt, Leeds have a load of players you probably couldn't tell me the name of. I could probably tell you the name of 5 or 6 that were on the pitch for Leeds today, because they all scramble into much of a muchness that is this big, intense, fast attacking unit. That is their forte. We're reliant on a couple of individual sparkles in there with some competent midfield and defensive performances. Quite clearly, they don't mix and come off in our favour. So that's sort of what I'm saying. That it's different playing them than it is against other sides.
Yeah, and just one more quickly from Patrick Ridge. We'll have to get back on the show again soon. I'll be doing all right, mate. He said, defensive turnover is a huge issue, as Rob says, and that comes from fitness. Fitter players stay sharp longer. With the changes, why was it not moved to a 4-3-3 with Godfrey at right back, Decore at midfield? A lot needs to be asked of Carlo. Dreadful decisions. Nobody wants him gone, but he must do better. Yeah, I think that's fair enough, mate. And Dave, I
was just going to say on Les's point, he's absolutely right that there's no excuse for us not to have the same fitness level as Leeds United. I think it's more how they utilise it in those attacking areas. It's how you use the batteries that you've got, if you like, isn't it? We tend to sort of let ours just play out in a slow, stagnant way, whereas Leeds tend to just use all of theirs up, then recharge them at half time and go again.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would say we haven't even got any batteries after that day.
Yeah, very true.
But just
certainly not Duracell.
Yeah, one other stat, just you mentioned Matt Cheam a few times, that in terms of XG, that was Everton's worst defensive performance for 101 Premier League games. So there you go. Not great at the back. Great at the back. Must do better. We'll leave it there anyway. Thanks very much to Dave, to Ryan and to Rob. That's been your instant match reaction for Everton 0, Leeds United 1. Of course, we'll do more analysis on this game in the week and build ahead to what Rob said was a must-win game against Burnley. So thanks very much for listening. We'll speak to you again soon here on the Blue Room.